Hey everyone, welcome to Mountain View Church at Home. Maybe you're wondering, why am I back on the stage? And you're thinking, wait, weren't you filming out and about and had these nature shots and everything? Yeah, that's true. But what we're doing is we're actually getting ready to move back in-house. Some churches in Whitehorse in the Yukon are already starting to gather in smaller groups. Maybe you've started gathering in the church at home groups, a dozen people together, and you can form these bubble groups, and maybe you're doing all that, and that is really exciting. We're so glad if that's how you're checking in on church. And starting first Sunday in July, we're going to be gathering again in this building, and so our tech team and music team and everyone's just trying to get ready for, hey, what's it going to look like again when we're a mix of at-home online gatherings and in-house, but no gatherings over 50, and everyone's trying to get ready to try to keep rules of social distancing and how do we keep everything clean. And it's a huge process, but we're thankful for those of you who have been praying with us. Continue to pray that we have a good plan in place. We don't want to turn anyone away, so please think through that. And obviously the preferred option is church at home groups to gather in homes, but if you really feel you need to be in the church building, we get it. And we want to make sure we make good decisions. We want to be faithful that God's going to take care of us, but we also want to be wise and prudent in the decisions we make. And so we want you to do the same. If you'd like to begin a church at home group, if this is something you've been thinking about, gathering with maybe another family, another two families, maybe couples, singles, households, whatever you want to do, you can go to mountainviewwhitehorse.ca/church at home. And you're going to see a little button there, a little menu option that says host church at home. Click that and it's going to be a small form, and you can sign in, kind of log in your household, your host group, and then we'll know, hey, this is where people are checking in. This is kind of a part of our church. It's that first century feel, but with a modern twist. And so we'd encourage you to keep pushing into that, keep leaning into gathering in your homes until we get to the point where maybe we can have 100 or more and get bigger gatherings here. So thank you so much for tuning in once again. Let's get started. We've been going through a series called Make It Count, looking at an ancient biblical text called Ecclesiastes. There was a man by the name of Solomon, and he was a great king. At a young age, he prayed and asked God that God would give him wisdom. And God was so impressed that he asked for wisdom instead of wealth and popularity and honor in a vast kingdom, that God granted him wisdom that had never been seen before and that would never be seen after. Most scholars believe that he, at the end of his life, he kind of wrote this book as kind of a memoir, as he experienced everything and had the resources and know-how to experience the world. As he looks at the world, he writes Ecclesiastes, say, hey, here's what I've seen, here's what I've experienced. He uses a word that stems through the whole book called vanity. This word vanity, in the Hebrew, it's havel, meaning a vapor or a breath, that it's here for a moment and it's gone. And what he's trying to explain is humanity seeks the world for all these experiences, pleasures, wealth, possessions, all this stuff, but that it's vanity. It's a vapor and it's gone, fleeting, futile, meaningless. And today we're jumping into Ecclesiastes 6. Ecclesiastes 6, and we're going to kind of center around status and influence and popularity and honor and some of those kind of things. So why don't you grab a Bible? If you have a print version, you can go ahead and look at the table of contents, find Ecclesiastes, get to Ecclesiastes, and we're going to go to chapter 6. If you have a mobile device, just download a Bible app, open it up, and in the search function, select ECC, and it should find Ecclesiastes. Again, go to chapter 6. And so we're going to start in verse 1. Ecclesiastes 6, verse 1. Here's what it says. There is an evil that I have seen under the sun, and it lies heavy on mankind. A man to whom God gives wealth, possessions, and honor, so that he lacks nothing of all that he desires. Yet God does not give him the power to enjoy them, but a stranger enjoys them. This is vanity. It is a grievous evil. This first kind of principle I want to talk about is that God gives gifts, but does not force enjoyment. I want to say that again. God may give us gifts, but he doesn't force us to enjoy them. And this is what Solomon's kind of getting at. It's like this situation where God gives a man, gives someone wealth and possessions and honor, has all these things, which Solomon was a guy who had all that stuff. But that God then doesn't give him the power to enjoy them. Okay, well, what does that really mean? Well, God doesn't force enjoyment. But this gifts from God thing is leaning towards a theological topic, a term called common grace. God's common grace. I want to give a bit of a definition here, also known as general grace. God's universal, non-saving grace in which blessings are given to humanity for physical sustenance, pleasure, learning, beauty, etc. As expressions of God's goodness. It is particularly contrasted in Reformed theology with God's special or saving grace. Justin Holcomb, specifically related to Ecclesiastes in this passage, he expands on this thought process of common grace. Here's what he writes. God's common grace is available to all as he gives humankind blessings in addition to those related to salvation. Physical provision, science and technological innovations, legal systems, and even the growth and development of human society in general are all signs of God's common grace. Common grace is ultimately a demonstration of the goodness and mercy of God that brings him glory as he governs and provides for his human creatures. This first piece, God gives us gifts. And this is part of his common grace. Last week, we talked about a few statistics that like 1 in 9 people are actually hungry. They actually don't get enough food. 1 in 3 don't have access to clean drinking water. And 45% of all death in children and in the world is related to poor nutrition. The fact that some of us, most of us in the world, that we can get 3 meals a day and clean drinking water, this alone is a massive gift from God. This is God's common grace. Never mind those of us living in the West that have shelter and clothes to wear and even have money to enjoy things. But we have a choice. God doesn't give us things and then forces us to enjoy them. That's up to us. We choose to look at our life and say, hey, I've been given 3 square meals a day. I have clean drinking water. I have clothes to wear. I have shelter. Thank you, God. I appreciate you, and I appreciate the good gifts. I appreciate the common grace that you've given me, and I'm choosing to enjoy them. This is a process that we need to work through. God may give us gifts, but he will not force us to enjoy them. That this is this thought and emotion thing that we often talk about, that the Bible reveals. In our world, often the emotion tells us that we need to have joy based on what we get. But the Bible pushes against that and says, actually, no, you can get loads of gifts. You can be bestowed, God can bestow upon you tons of common grace, but you still, in your mind, have to choose. You have to say, this, I'm thankful. This is a good gift. This is common grace. I will enjoy this. And so this is so important for us that we do not get caught up in what we feel based on what we get, but that we look at everything we have and we take a bigger step back and we look at a global perspective, a historical perspective in this moment, in this time, and say, wow, God, you have been so gracious to me. You have given me so many good gifts. And I will choose to enjoy them, and I will find joy. The first couple verses, Solomon mentions wealth, possessions, and honor, 3 kind of things. Now, last week, we dealt with wealth and possessions in a big way because chapter 5 had a lot of that in it, and we unpacked it big time. So if you missed that message, you can go to YouTube, go to our Vimeo channel, Facebook, go to our website, the on-demand, church on-demand menu option, and you can look at that and you can see that last message specifically focused on wealth and possessions. Today, we're going to kind of move toward this concept of honor or status, influence, stuff like that. And so that's where we're going to move, and we're going to notice that when we get into the next few verses. So verse 3, it says, if a man fathers 100 children and lives many lives so that the days of his years are many, but his soul is not satisfied with life's good things, and he also has no burial, I say that a stillborn child is better off than he. For it comes in vanity and goes in darkness, and in darkness its name is covered. Moreover, it has not seen the sun or known anything, yet it finds rest rather than he. Even though he should live 1,000 years twice over, yet enjoy no good, do not all go to the one place. God may give us influence, but not satisfaction. Because if we look at this passage, it starts with if a man has 100 children and lives many years. Well, what does that really matter? How does that work? Well, you got to think in the ancient world. In the ancient world, status, honor, influence, if you had a lot of children, which child mortality rate was different in the ancient world, lots of deaths at childbirth, lots of illness and sickness and disease, and children died young, and a lot of that. So having lots of children, that means you were blessed. That's status. And then if you live to an old age, again, because life expectancy wasn't high in the ancient world. And so if you lived a long life and you experienced that health and wellness and you were able to, again, that's status, that's honor. There's something in social media called an influencer. You might have heard YouTube influencers, Instagram influencers. This is like an old school version of an influencer. If you had a lot of kids and you lived a lot of years, you are a key influencer with lots of honor and popularity in this world. And then he transitions to something really kind of like really dark and really hard for us to see. It's shocking as the words kind of almost jump out of the page that he's saying, if you are the greatest influencer and have the greatest status and honor, but you're not satisfied in life, that a stillborn child is better off than you. That's life. And at first we think about it, for anyone who has experienced in their family or maybe personally as a couple experienced a miscarriage or a stillborn child, like the darkness that he talks about, you felt that and you understand that sorrow. And when he says those words, it shocks us. And even he uses the word that a stillborn child's life is vanity. Now, not in the modern sense, remember, this is Havel, the vapor, that he's talking very technically that a stillborn child, that their life is a vapor. It's like a single exhale, and it's over so quickly. And so now when we fully understand this whole piece about a stillborn child, and we process through this, and say, okay, wait a second. So he's saying, if I look at our modern age, so let's say I have tons of YouTube or Instagram followers, I got tons of subscribes and likes, or let's say in the corporate world, I have a high status, I'm on the top floor of the building. Let's say I own a ton of business. Let's say in the government world, I'm in a high political position. The military world or law enforcement, I'm in a high position. Whatever you want to say, you're in this high status position and you are a key leader, influencer. You got it all. But if in that moment you're still not satisfied, you still can't find satisfaction when you've reached that level, your life's meaningless, and that a stillborn child is better off. We see, like, God may give us influence. He maybe has given you a place, a position of leadership or status. Maybe online and social media, like people follow you, and that's an amazing honor to be able to influence people that way. But Solomon comes right at that and he says, look, if you're not satisfied with that, if you can't find satisfaction, then that's a serious problem. If I can't find satisfaction even when I'm at this status, what's the point here? I'm missing something. It says in verse 5, moreover, it has not, speaking the stillborn child, has not seen the sun or known anything, yet it finds rest rather than he. So a stillborn child, again, this is this dark concept. Again, he's trying to shock us. He's trying to say, hey, wake up, this is important. And he's saying if a stillborn child who has not even felt the warmth of the sun, not seen a single sunrise or a sunset, and has not known anything, the stillborn child never got to meet his parents, never got to enter the world fully, never got to live. But he's saying, look, even that child, that stillborn child, they have more rest. And that's key for us to understand. Biblically, being satisfied in life, content, that rest come hand in hand. People who are satisfied with where they're at, they sleep really well. They rest well. They spend a day or two a week on the weekends, and they enjoy life, and they're at peace and they're at calm. And it has nothing to do with however high their status is, how much influence, how many likes, how many follows, how many raises they've got, how many promotions. It has nothing to do with that. It means that they've looked at their life, they've looked at the good gifts of influence, the good gifts of honor and that God has bestowed upon them, and they say, I am satisfied, I am thankful. And my position, my satisfaction, my contentment, my rest, it doesn't lie in those likes on the page. It doesn't lie in how many promotions I get. It doesn't lie in how many people give me accolades. It doesn't lie in how much honor I have. It does not lie in that. That those things, they're great gifts. It's common grace. I appreciate them, but those don't define me. I am satisfied and I am at rest without those or with them. And this is what Solomon is saying, because he had great accolades, vast kingdom. He had everything anyone could want. And this is a memoir, and he's saying, look, I'm telling you, satisfaction. The more you have, the greater the honor you have. The satisfaction comes harder. And then he has like this little closing statement. Check this out in verses 7 to 9. He says, all the toil of man is for his mouth, yet his appetite is not satisfied. For what advantage has the wise man over the fool? And what does the poor man have who knows how to conduct himself before the living? Better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of the appetite. This is also vanity and striving after the wind. He's kind of summing up what he's talking about already, but kind of, again, he comes out of the gate and he just shocks us with his word pictures, that God has given him a gift, that the Spirit is leading him to write some things that just get abrasive with us. They just hit us in the chest and say, hey, take a look at this. Because now he's outlining this thought process, this journey that it's like a buffet table. Imagine you come to a buffet table and you have everything you'd want, every food, every appetizer, every main course, every dessert you'd ever want. And you go back, you've gone back 10 times to that buffet table and you are just feasting. And you get back in your seat, your plate is yet empty again for the 10th time, and you sit down and you're like, I'm still hungry. How is this possible that I'm still hungry? And this is the picture that Solomon is trying to show us, that's what chasing prestige and honor and status and influence, this is what it's like. Because you will go back to social media over and over and over again. You will go back to that career. You will go back to that political position. You will go back to it, trying to seek more honor, more prestige, more influence, and it never ends. You will come home at night, and because you've been chasing that, it is like going to that buffet table again, and yet it did nothing. You know you put it in your mouth. You should be full. You should be satisfied. You should no longer be hungry, and yet you're still hungry. Always still hungry. And then he shifts here, and he says, look, whether you're a rich man or you're a poor man, whether you're a wise man or you're a fool, he's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter on your societal status. It doesn't matter on any of that the individual, every person, wise or fool, rich or poor, that he shows this thing that you're blind if you can't accept the status you've been given, if you can't just take the gifts that God's given, take in the place he's been, and be satisfied. And then he says, it's like your eyesight. The average person, They work, they have a decent home, decent life, decent family. They go through and they enjoy maybe a sunset, a sunrise. They have their sight. A person can be thankful with just their sight, with what they see, that it's better to just have your sight than have nothing, than have all this stuff. At least the average person can appreciate, enjoy life, enjoy what they see and say, this is good, this is grace. Even the fact that we can see things, even that is just common grace. He's trying to make these really big, polarizing statements to get us to understand that the chase will never end. Last week, the chase of wealth and possessions does not end. This week, the chase of status, honor, and influence, it does not end. There is no amount of times that you will scroll through social media. You will never be satisfied if that is where you're looking for value and worth. You will never be great enough. But where do we go from here? Remember, we've talked about this through this entire series. The story's not over. That Ecclesiastes, it's pointing somewhere. The Old Testament, old promise, points to Jesus. Jesus always finishes the story that Solomon started. And Solomon has laid out something that maybe in your heart, and I know in my heart, that he's like, grabbed her heart and said, wake up. And maybe you're feeling that too. You read this, and Solomon's this wake-up call, but then Jesus comes in. And he's like, okay, I'm gonna provide the answers. I'm going to provide you with something now so that you understand, so that you're able to get past seeking this influence and honor and status. You'll be able to leave that, and you're going to find true satisfaction. You're going to find true enjoyment and true worth and value and rest. Don't we all need that? True rest. A night of just deep sleep, a brain that's not full of worry. That's what Jesus comes at us and says. And for a moment, if you're just checking out Christianity, you're just checking out church, and you're thinking like, maybe you're not feeling like, I don't know if I'm good enough to be going to church. I don't know if I'm good enough to be looking at things like this in the Bible. I don't know. And maybe you're not feeling, especially after reading these passages. I just want to show you, we're going to read a story right now about Jesus' followers, like his first followers. And we're going to read a story. They didn't have it all together either. And so, if you don't know me, if this is your first time, I don't have it all together. And if you've never been to Mountain View Church before, physically or online, you need to know Mountain View Church doesn't have it all together. We're just wandering with you, and we're just trying to look for something more. And for those of us that know Jesus, we found it. We know that he's the answer. And so here in Luke 22, verse 24, it says, a dispute also arose among them. This is Jesus' disciples, as to which of them was to be regarded as the greatest. Let's pause there, verse 24. Disciples are hanging out, Jesus is there, and disciples start an argument on who's going to be the greatest, like who's going to be the best disciple. Are you serious, guys? You're with the Son of God, you're with the Messiah, the King of Kings, and we're on this adventure together, we're on this journey, and now you guys are going to squabble on who's the greatest, who's got the greatest status, who's ever going to be the best church influencer. This is first century. This is first century, but this is now. This is current life. This is our churches. This is our workplace. This is our family dynamics. This is it. People all trying to position with who's the best, who's got the most honor, everyone trying to one-up everyone's story, everyone trying to one-up each other, who's got the greatest impact. This is human beings almost at their worst, okay? And so Jesus is going to come at that, and he's going to say, okay, let me get this straight. Same problem. Solomon was talking about it. Who's going to be the greatest influence? Who's going to be the greatest? New Testament, still struggling with it. Jesus comes out and he says this. The kings of the Gentiles. Gentiles is a word that means non-Jews, the Greco-Roman world at that time. The kings of the Gentiles exercise lordship over them, and those in authority over them are called benefactors. But not so with you. Rather, let the greatest among you become as the youngest, and the leader as one who serves. For who is the greater one who reclines at table or one who serves? It is not the one who reclines at table, but I am among you as the one who serves. He says, let the greatest among you become the youngest. Now you're like, why is it the youngest? Keep in mind, in the ancient world, being old in age, being elderly, that's an honor thing because you've lived a long life, you haven't died, God's sustained you, you've experienced God's common grace of life. And I would say that to be true even today, that there is, once you reach a certain age, you have wisdom, you have knowledge about things, and that is an honorable thing. I think that's true. And he's like, let the greatest among you become as the youngest, and the leader as one who serves. So the one who has big influence, step down and start serving people. Are you worried about the platform, or are you worried about serving people? This is what Jesus comes at. It says, he's like, look, you want to really enjoy this life? You want true fulfillment, enjoyment, satisfaction. You want rest? Step down and leave the focus of how many people like you, of how high a position you have, of who's the greatest, who's the best. Leave all that. Leave it aside. Step down and step in to people. Jesus is saying, hear this, it's not about how many people follow you, it's about who you follow. I want to say this again, it's not about how many people follow you, it's about who you follow. Do you follow yourself and let yourself try to build your kingdom up on earth and build your status and influence so that you're satisfied? Is that what because that's going to be fleeting. But Jesus is saying, if you follow me, all that stuff won't matter. The closer you get to Jesus, the less you need that honor and status. When we have Jesus as the founding component and we move forward from there, everything that happens, even when we're serving instead of being served, is amplified. Our life has crazy meaning. And so, today, I want to talk about reopening. There's going to be a temptation for all of us that we're going to think, once I get back to regular shopping, I'll be fulfilled. I'll have satisfaction. Once I can go to restaurants instead of cooking my own food, then I'll be satisfied. And we're going to start to think that if we can get to a place or if something can happen, then we're going to be satisfied and rested and we'll be content. But remember, pre-COVID-19, were you really satisfied? Were you really content? Pre-COVID-19, as a pastor, I can tell you, people struggled before COVID-19. And so to think that once we're all released to do what we want, that everything will be happy again, yes, we'll enjoy some things, for sure. But it's not going to be all our dreams come true. And maybe you're thinking, okay, once COVID-19 is done, then I'll reach this level of whatever I need to do, that maybe my business was hindered or this promotion was hindered or anything, and it's like I'll be able to really branch out, and then I'll finally, it'll be okay, everything will be okay, but be careful. It might not work out. I understand that you've heard this, and maybe you're new to church and new to Christianity, and you're realizing, I've been chasing social media, I've been chasing a job, I've been chasing all sorts of stuff, trying to find satisfaction. And I found out satisfaction is not guaranteed. One of the things that Ecclesiastes helps us do is that we can ask the question, if we only had today, what would we be doing differently? If we only had today, how would we make it count? And so this question to you, I would say, if you don't know Jesus, today is the day. You can give your life to Jesus today. You can accept that there's sin in your life, there's a searching, there's a yearning, there's a struggle, and that's kind of separating you from really being connected from God. And Jesus comes along and says, I want to forgive you of the wrong you've done, and I want to give you a Holy Spirit, His Holy Spirit, to guide you. And without that sin, with the freedom and peace and calm and contentment of Jesus, you can enter in a relationship. If you'd like to give your life to Jesus today, or maybe for those of you that know Jesus, you just want that reset. You've been chasing the status and influence, and you need to just focus back on Jesus. Let's do that now. Let's take this opportunity, center on Jesus, submit our lives to Him, find contentment in Him, and then experience every good gift. Let's pray. Dear Father, I know that I'm a sinner. I know that I chase things. I chase status and honor and influence, and sometimes chasing wealth and possessions and all these different things. And I'm trying to satisfy myself, but it's vanity, it's futile. I accept that now. I accept that the only way I'll find satisfaction is through you. I thank you that you loved me enough to send your son Jesus to pay for my sin. I believe that he died on the cross for my sin, but that he rose again on that third day, conquering sin and death and making a way, giving me access to you. And so I submit my life to Jesus. I choose to follow Jesus. I want a new way of life that comes through serving other people and serving you. I will not sit in the sidelines waiting for enjoyment or satisfaction to come to me, but that I will step in. I will not argue about who's the greatest or best, but I will step in and I will choose to have an impact on this world, and I will look forward to heaven and look forward to that kingdom, and that's where I'll get eternal rest. But in this moment, may I choose to step out of myself and serve, not looking for pleasurable experiences for myself, but looking to bless others. Father, be with those who are going to step out and host church in their home. Bless them. And as they gather in these small church at home groups, I pray that you would be there, and that great discussions would be engaged, and that meals would be shared, and communion would be shared, and that they might experience that first century home church, but in a modern feel. We ask that this week we might take a step downward, and that we might serve. Help us reach out to the church leaders we know and ask them, how can we help? Help us be humble. Help us be servants. Help us follow Jesus. And it's in his name we pray.